Kara had always found solace in the forest. It was a place where she could clear her head, where the outside world seemed to fade away with every step into the trees. But that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the woods in long dark shadows, something felt off. She couldn't quite place it at first, just a nagging feeling that she wasn't alone. She had been on the trail countless times before, but tonight the familiar markers seemed to vanish. The path twisted in ways it shouldn't, and every direction she turned looked the same. The trees seemed taller, denser, their branches intertwining like they were trying to trap the sky. The deeper she walked, the more the air felt heavy, thick, almost oppressive. Kara told herself she wasn't lost. She just needed to find her bearings. But with each step, the forest felt stranger. There were no animal sounds, no birds, no rustling of small creatures in the underbrush. Just silence. Too much silence, except for something. It was faint, barely audible, like a soft murmur carried on the breeze. At first she thought it was her mind playing tricks, but the further she walked, the more distinct it became. The path abruptly ended, opening into a small clearing she didn't recognize. It wasn't marked on any map, and she had never come across it before. In the center of the clearing was something that didn't belong. A door. A tall, old wooden door, standing on its own with no frame, no walls, no explanation. The wood was weathered, with strange, intricate carvings covering its surface, symbols that looked ancient but unrecognizable. Kara stood frozen, staring at the door. There was no logical reason for it to be there, yet it felt like it had always been waiting. Her feet shifted unconsciously toward it, her mind struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. She felt a pull, like gravity itself was dragging her closer. But then, something shifted. Not around her, but in her. It was a subtle sensation at first, like the air had changed. She turned her head, glancing back at the path she had come from. But now, it wasn't there. The trees had closed in, rearranged themselves, creating a maze of branches and shadows. The trail was gone, as if it had never existed. She tried to shake off the unease, but the feeling only grew. The faint murmur she had been hearing all along grew louder, though it still wasn't clear. It was like voices, but not in any language she recognized. They seemed to be coming from the trees, or maybe the earth itself. She couldn't tell. It was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Kara's heart pounded in her chest as she took a step back, her eyes darting around the clearing. Everything felt wrong now. The silence, the heavy air, the whispers, and that door just standing there, as if it had been waiting for her. She thought about touching it, just to prove to herself it was real. But something deep inside her warned against it, like an instinct she couldn't ignore. And then, in the corner of her vision, she noticed movement. Not from the forest, but from the edges of the door itself, where shadows seemed to pool and shift unnaturally. There was nothing there, but the way the light bent around the door, the way the air seemed to hum. Something was off, terribly off. Kara's breath caught in her throat. She tried to take a step back, but her legs felt heavy, like they didn't quite belong to her anymore. The door didn't open. It didn't need to. Just standing there, it felt alive, like it was aware of her presence, like it was waiting for her to do something, anything. But Kara didn't move. She couldn't. After what felt like hours, though only seconds had passed, she finally found the strength to tear her gaze away from the door and stumbled back into the forest. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Whatever that was, she knew it wasn't meant to be understood. It was something older, something that didn't belong in her world. She kept walking, faster now, though she didn't know which direction she was heading. The trail was gone, the forest around her an unfamiliar labyrinth. The whispers faded into the distance, but they never completely disappeared. They were always there, just beneath the surface, like the hum of a forgotten machine. Kara never found her way back to that clearing, but every time she returned to the forest, she felt it. That presence lurking just beyond the trees, watching, waiting. She never spoke about it because how could she? How could anyone explain something that made no sense? Something that shouldn't exist but does?